Nobody expected this to be the moment that changed women's basketball forever. Not a buzzer beater. Not a finals MVP. Not even a championship parade. It happened before Caitlin Clark played a single WNBA minute. In April 2024, multiple outlets confirmed what insiders had been whispering for months. Nike signed Caitlin Clark to a deal reportedly worth around $28 million over 8 years, including a future signature shoe expected to debut in 2026. One of the largest endorsement contracts ever for a women's basketball player. Let that sink in. Before her rookie season, before her first pro assist, before defenses even figured out how to guard her. And suddenly, the entire WNBA ecosystem felt different. Here's why this wasn't just a shoe deal. Nike doesn't hand out signature shoes lightly. Their women's basketball roster already includes legends Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, Aya Wilson. Players with championships, MVPs, Olympic gold. Caitlin Clark hadn't played a single WNBA game yet. But Nike wasn't betting on stats. They were betting on gravity. Because everywhere Caitlin went, Iowa, sold out arenas. TV ratings shattered records. Opposing gyms turned into road home crowds. ESPN games featuring Clark regularly doubled, even tripled, normal viewership. And Nike saw something bigger than basketball. They saw a cultural inflection point. Clark herself hinted at that mindset when discussing footwear design, saying she wanted something unique to me, not just another recycled model, a sneaker people chase, not just wear. That detail matters. Nike wasn't planning a basic endorsement. They were planning a moment. Inside the league, the deal sent shockwaves. Veteran players noticed. Front offices noticed. Sponsors noticed. Because whether fans loved Caitlin or criticized the hype, one truth became unavoidable. She was already moving money, eyeballs, and influence at a level the league had never seen from a rookie. And here's the part most people missed. Caitlin Clark didn't ask for this power. She didn't campaign for it. She didn't announce it loudly. Nike moved first. And once they did, the league could never go back to normal again. But this deal wasn't just about Caitlin Clark. Because what happened next, the ripple effects, the quiet tensions, and the pressure it put on everyone else, is where this story really starts. Here's where the story takes a turn most fans weren't ready for. Because once Caitlin Clark's Nike deal became public, it didn't just elevate her, it quietly reset expectations for the entire WNBA. Think about the timing. The league was already coming off record momentum. The 2023 WNBA season saw its highest attendance in years. The 2024 draft shattered viewership records, with Caitlin Clark's selection by the Indiana Fever becoming the most watched WNBA draft ever. And then Nike dropped the deal. Suddenly, front offices weren't just building rosters, they were managing spotlights. Every Fever road game instantly became a national event. Ticket prices surged. Secondary markets exploded. Arenas that hadn't sold out in years were suddenly packed weeks in advance. This wasn't normal rookie hype. This was economic gravity. Veteran stars understood it immediately. Sabrina Ionescu had already proven that a signature shoe could move culture and sell globally. Aya Wilson had built a resume that demanded respect. Breanna Stewart had championships, MVPs, and Olympic gold. But Caitlin Clark was arriving with something different. She wasn't chasing legacy yet, legacy was chasing her. And that created tension. Not resentment, pressure. Because every rookie deal, every endorsement negotiation, every future #1 pick would now be measured against Caitlin's Nike benchmark. Agents noticed. Sponsors noticed. Players noticed. And Clark? She kept saying the same thing. She focused on basketball. In interviews, she consistently downplayed individual attention, redirecting praise to teammates and the growth of the game. She talked about responsibility, not entitlement. About understanding what the moment represented, not just for her, but for women's basketball as a whole. That restraint mattered. Because the louder the hype got, the quieter she stayed. And that contrast only made the deal feel bigger. But here's the part nobody talks about enough. Nike didn't just sign Caitlin Clark because of numbers or buzz. They signed her because she didn't fracture the room. Despite intense scrutiny, physical defense, and relentless criticism, Clark never leaned into controversy. She didn't escalate. She didn't clap back. She absorbed pressure and kept moving forward. That made her safe. And dangerous. Because when a player can carry hype and restraint at the same time, that's when leagues change. And coming up next, the unintended consequences of that Nike deal, and why some people inside the WNBA quietly realized they were now playing in a different era. Now this is where the conversation inside the league got uncomfortable. Because Caitlin Clark's Nike deal didn't just raise her profile, it forced comparisons no one wanted to make out loud. For years, WNBA stars had fought for recognition, equity, and investment. Players like Aya Wilson and Breanna Stewart built championship resumes. Sabrina Ionescu shattered records and launched a wildly successful signature shoe. Those milestones mattered. But Caitlin Clark arrived with something unprecedented. She brought mainstream inevitability. Television partners adjusted schedules. Broadcasters pushed fever games into prime slots. Social media engagement around Clark regularly outperformed entire team accounts. And suddenly, conversations shifted from, how do we grow the league, to, how do we manage this level of attention? That distinction is massive. Because growth is controlled. Attention is chaotic. Inside front offices, executives understood the upside. Sold-out arenas, higher sponsorship interest, rising valuations. But they also knew the risk, imbalance. When one player becomes the gravitational center, everything else bends toward them. Clark didn't ask for that. But she couldn't escape it either. What made this even more complex was how she handled it. She never positioned herself above veterans. She consistently credited those who came before her. She spoke about learning, adjusting, and respecting the league's physicality. That mattered to players. Because this wasn't a rookie walking in like she owned the room. This was someone aware she'd walked into a house already built by others. And yet, the numbers kept speaking louder than words. Nike's reported $28 million commitment wasn't just endorsement confidence. It was a statement about who could carry the sport forward into new spaces, sneaker culture, casual fans, younger audiences who hadn't followed the WNBA before. And that created a silent divide. Not between players, between eras. Some fans framed it as favoritism. Others called it overdue investment. But insiders described it as something simpler, inevitability meeting timing. Because Caitlin Clark didn't just peak at the right moment. She arrived when the league was finally ready to catch what she brought with her. And here's the twist. This deal didn't just change how rookies are viewed, it quietly changed how teams evaluate pressure. Because if Caitlin Clark could carry this level of spotlight and still perform, the bar for mental toughness just moved. We need to talk about Indiana, and why this Nike deal put a target on the Fever before the season even tipped off. Indiana didn't just draft a rookie. They inherited a spotlight. The moment the Fever selected Caitlin Clark with the #1 pick in the 2024 WNBA draft, everything around the franchise shifted, and the Nike deal amplified it tenfold. This was a team coming off a rebuilding season, focused on development, chemistry, and patience. Suddenly, patience wasn't part of the conversation anymore. Every Fever practice became content. Every warm-up clip went viral. Every road game felt like a neutral site event. And Clark walked into all of it carrying the weight of a $28 million endorsement and the expectations that came with it. Here's the reality most casual fans missed. Indiana didn't just have to help Caitlin succeed on the court, they had to protect her off it. Opposing defenses were physical from day one. Teams tested her stamina, her composure, her ability to play through contact. Veterans made it clear, nothing would be given. And Clark responded the only way she knew how. She worked. She adjusted to the speed. She absorbed contact. She learned how quickly help defense collapses at the pro level. There were nights she struggled. There were nights she flashed brilliance. And through it all, cameras never left. The Nike deal magnified everything. A bad shooting night became a headline. A tough loss sparked think pieces. A quiet quarter triggered social media debates. But internally, the fever stayed steady. Coaches emphasized growth over noise. Teammates spoke about her work ethic, her willingness to listen, her competitiveness in practice. The narrative outside was loud. Inside, it was controlled. And that balance mattered. Because Indiana understood something crucial. This wasn't just about Caitlin Clark's rookie season. This was about sustainability. Nike wasn't planning a one-year spike. They were planning a decade-long presence. And the Fever knew that if they rushed the process, the cost would be higher than wins and losses. But here's where the pressure really intensified. Every time Indiana stepped onto the floor, they weren't just representing a franchise. They were representing the future image of the league. And the rest of the WNBA noticed. Because if Indiana cracked under the spotlight, critics would say the hype was too much. If they thrived, the bar for every rebuilding team would rise. And coming up next, the moment players across the league realized Caitlin Clark wasn't shrinking from the pressure, she was learning how to carry it. There was a moment, subtle, easy to miss, when the league's tone around Caitlin Clark changed. It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't a viral clip. It was on the floor. Opposing teams stopped testing her emotionally and started testing her strategically. That's when veterans knew. Because early on, Clark was getting the full rookie treatment. Physical defense, constant ball pressure, traps far beyond the three-point line. Teams wanted to see if the hype would crack her. Instead, she adapted. She started moving without the ball more. She trusted teammates. She took fewer rushed shots and punished defenses with passes when they overcommit. The game slowed down. And when the game slows down for a shooter like Caitlin Clark, things get dangerous. Players around the league noticed the shift. You could see it in defensive adjustments, in how quickly help rotated, in how coaches spoke post-game. This wasn't about welcoming a rookie anymore. This was about containment. And here's why the Nike deal matters in this phase. Because endorsement pressure breaks players all the time. When the money is loud, the expectations get louder. But Clark never tried to perform the deal. She played the game the same way she always had, confident, aggressive, accountable. That steadiness is rare, especially for someone carrying the financial weight of a reported $28 million commitment and the symbolic weight of being labeled the future. And quietly, something else happened. Younger players started watching differently. Not just how she shot, but how she handled mistakes. How she responded to hard fouls. How she answered questions after losses. She didn't deflect. She didn't dramatize. She owned it. That's when her presence crossed from hype into leadership, without a speech, without a title. And it sent a message Nike already understood. This wasn't a short-term phenomenon. This was a player learning how to exist at the center of a league, without letting the league consume her. But here's the part nobody was prepared for. The ripple effects of Caitlin Clark's deal didn't stop with Indiana or Nike. It started reshaping how the next generation would be valued. And that's where this story gets even bigger. Here's the consequence nobody talked about on draft night. Caitlin Clark's Nike deal didn't just reward her, it recalibrated the ceiling for everyone coming next. For years, elite women's basketball players were told the same thing. The talent is there, the audience will come eventually, the money will follow someday. Clark's deal shattered that timeline. Someday became now. Front offices began thinking differently about marketability. Sponsors started asking new questions. Agents recalculated leverage. Because if a rookie could command a reported $28 million commitment before playing a pro game, then the old playbook was officially outdated. And this wasn't theory. You could see it in how brands talked about women's basketball afterward. More long-term language. More signature talk. Less hesitation. Nike didn't just invest in Caitlin Clark. They validated the idea that a women's basketball player could be a primary brand pillar, not a secondary endorsement. That matters, because endorsement ecosystems shape opportunity. They determine who gets visibility, who gets runway, who gets patience. Clark's deal forced the industry to acknowledge something players had known for years. The product was never the problem. Timing was. And Caitlin arrived at the exact intersection of talent, storytelling, and cultural momentum. But with that shift came new pressure, not just for players, but for the league itself. The WNBA now had to support stars operating at unprecedented commercial levels. Travel, scheduling, marketing, everything was under a microscope. Because when athletes reach this tier, infrastructure matters. And the league knew it. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert publicly spoke about capitalizing on momentum, about ensuring growth matched demand. Clark's deal wasn't mentioned directly. It didn't need to be. Everyone understood the subtext. This was a test, not of Caitlin Clark, of the system around her. And here's the part that made this deal even more powerful. Despite everything, the money, the hype, the expectations, Clark never reframed her goals. She kept talking about winning, improving, and competing. No brand-first language. No entitlement. No distance from the grind. That consistency made the shift feel legitimate, not inflated. We need to talk about sneaker culture and why Caitlin Clark's future signature shoe might end up being the most important symbol of this entire moment. This is where the story leaves basketball and enters culture. Because Caitlin Clark's Nike deal wasn't complete the moment the contract was signed. It won't be complete until her signature shoe hits the floor. According to multiple reports, Nike is targeting spring 2026 for Clark's first signature release. That timeline alone tells you how seriously they're approaching this. Signature shoes aren't rushed. They're engineered, tested, refined, and most importantly, marketed with patience. Nike knows the stakes. A signature shoe isn't just footwear. It's identity. It's storytelling. It's an invitation into sneaker culture, a space that has historically been difficult for women athletes to fully penetrate at scale. Sabrina Ionescu cracked the door with her Sabrina one. Aya Wilson is preparing to step through with her own. Caitlin Clark? She might kick the door off the hinges. But because Clark doesn't just bring fans, she brings new fans. Young shooters. Casual viewers. People who didn't grow up watching the WNBA but found themselves staying. And that's the audience sneaker brands chase hardest. Clark herself has talked about wanting something that feels very unique to her. Not a copy, not a remix. A shoe people want to hunt for. Colorways that feel intentional. Drops that feel earned. That language matters. It signals long-term vision, not hype. Nike is betting that by the time the shoe drops, Caitlin Clark won't just be a star, she'll be a fixture. Someone whose game, personality, and presence are familiar across generations. And here's the thing most people don't realize. If this shoe succeeds, it changes everything. More signature opportunities. More youth investment. More leverage for future stars. More proof that women's basketball isn't niche, it's scalable. This isn't just about Caitlin Clark's name on a box. It's about whether the market is finally ready to respond at the level the talent has demanded for years. And coming up next, why this deal may end up being remembered not as a contract, but as a turning point the league never came back from. History usually doesn't announce itself when it arrives. It feels ordinary, messy, debated. That's exactly what made Caitlin Clark's Nike deal so powerful. Because in real time, it wasn't universally celebrated. Some questioned the timing. Others questioned the scale. A few questioned whether she'd earned it yet. But history doesn't wait for consensus. It moves when conditions align. And Clark's deal aligned talent, timing, and visibility in a way the WNBA had never seen before. The league had stars. The league had skill. What it hadn't always had was sustained mainstream attention. Clark didn't create that alone. but she concentrated it. Media partners leaned in harder. Networks scheduled around fever games. Storylines followed her from city to city. And slowly, quietly, the conversation shifted from novelty to normalcy. This wasn't "Can women's basketball draw?" It was, "How do we handle this demand?" That's a different question entirely. Nike understood that distinction early. They didn't market Caitlin Clark as a moment. They positioned her as a constant. And the WNBA followed. League leadership talked openly about expansion, infrastructure, and long-term investment. Again, Clark wasn't always named directly. She didn't need to be. Everyone knew what had accelerated the timeline. And here's what makes this moment rare. Clark didn't fracture the league's identity. She didn't overshadow its values. She didn't turn the conversation inward. Instead, she became a focal point that amplified everything around her: teammates, opponents, rivalries, stakes. That's why the deal didn't collapse under scrutiny. It held. And now, years from now, when people look back, this won't be remembered as the time Nike took a risk. It'll be remembered as the moment the industry finally caught up to the product. But the story still isn't finished. Because what Caitlin Clark does next, on the court, in the playoffs, under pressure, will determine whether this deal becomes legendary or simply foundational. And that's what makes the final chapter so important. Here's the part that separates a big deal from a defining one. Money can announce belief, but performance is what locks it in. And Caitlin Clark knows that better than anyone. Because once the Nike deal became public, the margin for error shrank instantly. Every possession mattered more. Every slump felt louder. Every mistake was magnified through the lens of expectation. That's the hidden cost of being the future. Clark didn't respond by playing smaller. She leaned into the responsibility. She took the toughest defensive matchups. She absorbed contact without dramatics. She trusted teammates even when fans wanted hero ball. And she kept shooting, not recklessly, but confidently. That balance is rare. It's what veterans respect. Across the league, players began speaking less about the contract and more about her approach. How she prepared, how she competed, how she didn't flinch when the game got uncomfortable. Because eventually hype fades. Habits don't. And this is where the long view matters. Nike's timeline tells the story. A signature shoe in 2026 means they aren't rushing judgment. They're watching growth. They're watching adjustment. They're watching resilience. They want the full arc. And the WNBA does too. Because if Caitlin Clark sustains this level, not just statistically but emotionally, it sets a precedent no marketing campaign ever could. It tells future stars, you don't need to be perfect. You need to be durable, coachable, relentless. And it tells the league something just as important. You can bet big if you build smart. But here's the quiet truth beneath all of this. Caitlin Clark's Nike deal didn't guarantee greatness. It guaranteed opportunity. What happens with that opportunity, how she grows into it, how the league supports it, how fans respond, will decide how this era is remembered. And that brings us to the final question. Not whether Caitlin Clark can live up to the deal, but whether the sport is finally ready to grow at the pace she's setting. This story was never really about the number. Not the reported $28 million. Not the 8 years. Not even the signature shoe coming in 2026. It was about belief. Nike believed the moment had arrived, not just for Caitlin Clark, but for women's basketball as a whole. They believed the audience was ready. They believed the culture was listening. And they believed that one player, standing at the intersection of skill and visibility, could carry that weight without breaking. So far, they've been right. Clark didn't demand the spotlight. She inherited it. And instead of running from it, she learned how to stand inside it. That's why this deal landed differently. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel premature. It felt inevitable. Years from now, fans won't remember every stat line from Caitlin Clark's rookie season. They won't remember every debate or headline or hot take. But they'll remember the shift. They'll remember when WNBA arenas stopped feeling half full, when national broadcasts became routine, when young players started wearing women's basketball shoes without explanation. They'll remember when a rookie signing signaled confidence instead of caution. And maybe that's the real legacy of this deal. Not that Caitlin Clark got paid, but that the sport finally stopped asking for permission to grow. The next chapters will be written on the court. Championships, rivalries, evolution. But this chapter? This was the one that unlocked the door. And once it opened, there was no closing it again. If you care about where the WNBA is going, not just highlights, but the moments that actually change the league, make sure you're subscribed. Because this Caitlin Clark story? It's only the beginning. More rivalries, more pressure, more history happening in real time. Hit like if you believe women's basketball is entering a new era. Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss the next turning point. And let me know in the comments, do you think Caitlin Clark's Nike deal will be remembered as the biggest shift in WNBA history? I'll see you in the next one.